the bottom of the world, where the cold is so brutal it can snap equipment and freeze exposed skin in seconds, scientists found something that should not exist. Not a fossil, not a rock formation, not a body. A lake. An enormous lake, buried beneath miles of Antarctic ice, sealed away in total darkness, under crushing pressure, hidden from the sky for what may have been millions of years. And that alone would have been enough to turn heads, but the deeper scientists looked, the stranger it became. Because this wasn't just trapped water, it was a world. A black, pressurized environment no human had ever seen. A place that might hold ancient microbial life, strange chemistry, and clues about how life could survive on other worlds. Tonight, this is the story of Lake Vostok, the strange thing scientists found beneath the ice, and why it still feels like one of the most unsettling discoveries on Earth. To understand why Lake Vostok hit scientists so hard, you have to start with where it was found. The discovery is tied to Vostok Station, a Russian research station deep in East Antarctica. This is not the cinematic Antarctica people imagine, with penguins, dramatic coastlines, and floating icebergs. This is the inland continent, flat, blinding, high, and viciously cold. It is one of the harshest scientific environments on Earth. At Vostok Station, the landscape is almost offensively empty. No trees, no exposed rock, no visible water. Just ice. Ice above you, ice below you, ice stretching so far in every direction that it starts to feel less like terrain and more like a different planet. And that is exactly why the discovery feels so wrong. Because when people picture Antarctica, they picture frozen stillness. They picture a continent locked down so completely that nothing interesting should be happening beneath the surface. But beneath Vostok Station, buried under more than 3.5 kilometers of ice, there was something liquid, something vast. Something hidden so completely that for most of human history, no one even suspected it was there. That is the first shock of Lake Vostok. Not that it's mysterious, that it exists at all. The path to discovering Lake Vostok did not begin with someone drilling straight down and finding open water. It began with something subtler: radar, seismic work, and the growing realization that the ice sheet wasn't behaving the way a simple block of frozen material should behave. Scientists studying East Antarctica noticed that beneath the ice near Vostok Station was a remarkably flat region. And in a place shaped by geology, pressure, and buried topography, that kind of flatness means something. It suggests a boundary, a surface. In this case, the surface of liquid water lying under the ice itself. That was the moment the story changed. Because once researchers started piecing the evidence together, they realized they weren't looking at some tiny trapped pocket. They were looking at one of the largest known subglacial lakes on Earth, a body of water roughly 250 kilometers long and about 50 kilometers wide, hidden under Antarctica like a secret continent inside a continent. Pause there for a second. A lake that size is not a geological curiosity. It is an environment. This was not a puddle under a glacier. It was a massive freshwater reservoir buried under crushing weight, sealed away from wind, sunlight, weather, and the outside world. The ice above it had effectively erased it from ordinary reality. And once scientists understood that, the question stopped being, is there water down there? Now the question was much darker. What else is down there with it? The obvious question always comes next. How can a lake stay liquid under that much frozen mass? The answer is one of those scientific explanations that sound simple until you really think about what it means. Lake Vostok remains liquid because of a combination of geothermal heat rising from the earth below and the immense pressure of the ice above. That pressure lowers the freezing point enough that the lake can exist as liquid water, even in one of the coldest places on the planet. So while the surface above is brutally frozen, the world below is different. Dark, pressurized, isolated, cold but not frozen solid. And that combination is what gives Lake Vostok its almost science fiction quality. Because this is not normal water in a normal environment. This is a lake trapped under an ice sheet so thick it has been sealed away from direct contact with the atmosphere for an unimaginably long time. Depending on how scientists model its history, parts of it may have been isolated for millions of years. Millions. That means if anything survived there, it did so without sunlight, without ordinary weather, without the kind of ecological exchange we take for granted in every surface lake we know. That is why Lake Vostok stopped being just a glaciology story and became something bigger. It became a story about survival in impossible conditions. And that, naturally, led to the question that always electrifies scientists and the public in the same instant. Could there be life in it? The moment people heard hidden lake beneath Antarctic ice, the imagination went to one place immediately: life. Not fish, not sea monsters, not anything dramatic in the Hollywood sense. The real scientific excitement was much more microscopic and much more important. If Lake Vostok contained microbial life, it would mean organisms had managed to survive in one of the most hostile and isolated environments on Earth. No sunlight, enormous pressure, long-term separation from the surface, strange chemistry, total darkness. That would be extraordinary on its own, but it would also matter far beyond Antarctica. Because once you prove life can survive in a dark liquid environment sealed beneath ice, you stop thinking only about Earth. You start thinking about places like Europa, the icy moon of Jupiter, and Enceladus, the ice-covered moon of Saturn. World scientists already suspect may hide liquid water beneath frozen shells. In other words, Lake Vostok became more than a buried lake. It became an Earth-based test case for alien possibility. And that is such a powerful idea that people sometimes rush past the most unsettling part. Whatever may exist in Lake Vostok, if anything exists there at all, would not be living in a cold lake. It would be living in a prison of ice, cut off from the world that produced it, surviving by rules most surface life never has to learn. That is the kind of discovery that makes scientists lean forward. Because when life appears in places it should barely endure, it forces a rewrite of what habitable really means. Of course, the moment scientists wanted to study Lake Vostok directly, they ran into a massive problem. How do you reach a place like that without ruining it? That is the paradox of almost every great hidden discovery. The closer you get, the greater the risk that you become the contamination. For years, researchers drilled through the ice above Lake Vostok, but the final approach became deeply controversial. Scientists worried that if drilling fluid or surface microbes entered the lake, they could permanently alter one of the cleanest and most isolated environments on Earth before anyone had truly studied it. Think about that tension. Below the ice might be one of the most important, untouched environments on the planet. Above the ice are humans, carrying machines, chemicals, bacteria, and curiosity. In 2012, Russian scientists announced they had reached the lake after drilling through the ice above it. That was a huge moment, the kind of announcement that sounds like the start of a new era. But even then, the mystery did not suddenly become neat. Because reaching Lake Vostok is not the same as understanding Lake Vostok. Samples linked to the lake and its accreted ice triggered debate. Some results suggested the presence of microbial traces, others raised contamination concerns. The scientific story became exactly what real science usually becomes when the stakes are high: cautious, technical, contested, and slower than the headlines wanted. That is what makes Lake Vostok such a compelling subject for a video like this. It is not a fake mystery, it is a real one. We know enough to understand why it matters. We know enough to be disturbed by what it represents. But we still do not have the clean, cinematic answer people crave. And honestly, that makes it better. Because the truth about places like this is rarely a single reveal. It is a slow opening of a door no one can afford to kick in. The deeper meaning of Lake Vostok is not just that it is strange, it is that it changes how you see Antarctica itself. Once upon a time, people imagined the continent as a blank white slab, dead and static except for storms and ice. But Lake Vostok helped reveal a different Antarctica, one with hidden systems, buried water, motion under the surface, and environments no human eye had ever directly seen. And the unsettling part is that Lake Vostok is not completely alone. Scientists have identified many more subglacial lakes beneath Antarctica, but Vostok became the symbol, the one that captured the imagination, because it was so big, so isolated, and so deeply buried that it felt almost mythic. You begin to realize that the ice sheet is not just a lid, it is camouflage. Beneath it, there are landscapes, water systems, sediments, geological histories, possibly ecosystems, an entire hidden layer of Earth that modern humans only began to understand recently. That idea carries a particular kind of dread, because it means one of the emptiest-looking places on the planet is not empty at all. It just hides its secrets better than anywhere else. And that is why the title of this video works so well. Scientists did find something strange beneath the ice. Not because it glows, not because it moved, not because it broke the laws of nature, but because it revealed how incomplete our picture of the world still is. There was an entire lake down there, a real one, beneath miles of ice. And for most of human history, we had no idea. That should humble all of us. Some discoveries thrill people because they feel like triumphs. Lake Vostok is different. It lingers because it feels like trespassing. You picture the black water under the ice. You picture the weight above it. You picture the silence. No waves under open sky. No birds. No weather. No human witness for ages beyond imagination. And then, eventually, after all that isolation, the first contact comes not from nature, but from a drill. That image is why Lake Vostok stays with people. It compresses so many fears and fascinations into one place. The fear of what survives in darkness, the fascination of untouched worlds, the tension between discovery and contamination, the unsettling possibility that Earth still contains environments that feel more alien than familiar. For scientists, it is a serious research site. For the rest of us, it is also something else. A reminder that the planet is not fully mapped in the emotional sense. Even now, even with satellites, radar, drilling, and decades of polar science, Earth can still hide an entire world under the ice and wait for us to notice. That is not just interesting. That is eerie. So the next time Antarctica looks like an empty white void on a map, remember this. Under all that ice, there are places we still barely understand. Lake Vostok is one of them, a buried lake, a scientific frontier, and one of the strangest reminders that Earth can still surprise us. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. And now I want to ask you, if scientists eventually prove that something has been living in Lake Vostok all this time, would that amaze you more or terrify you more?